of my life. The pieces that I have in the show, I really feel like I'm at a stage in my life where I'm trying to learn and absorb as much information and knowledge as I can right now. And that's kind of where the books come from, and the paper cranes. I love that both of the pieces I have in the show have the paper cranes in them. AVA's beginnings, I kind of just attended sporadic events and classes. But then in about 2007, I started volunteering a lot more time, a lot more of the week. And in 2008, I was actually awarded Volunteer of the Year. And shortly after that, I got hired on to be gallery assistant, and which kind of grew into party coordinator, and then I was class coordinator, and all through, I think it was like 2015, the end of 2015, I was working at AVA. So I spent quite a bit of time there. I've shown pieces here and there all throughout the years. I mean, I attended the local color gala and showed there. Of course, practice your whatever you're creating, practice, but really you need to be involved. You need to get involved in the artists. You need to meet artists. You need to attend shows. You need to get to know people. You need to join a co-op, join the guild, just be involved in some way. And that helps you learn and grow and figure out which way you want to go. Art matters to me because, I don't know, it creates conversations, it inspires people, it makes you think outside of the box.
I wanted to be an artist from first grade on. That was my plan, was to be an artist. And one day early in the year, my teacher had a girl model for the class. And I remember everything about it. I remember the girl's name. I remember everything about it. From then on, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I had no idea what it meant. It's just that I knew I could draw and that people were impressed, and that was. I went to school at the University of Wyoming. I got a BFA there, and then applied for an MFA and taught for 2 years at UW while I was working on my MFA. And after that, I got a job teaching at a university in Ohio, and then came back here and taught for 29 years here in Gillette. It's essentially the only thing I ever envisioned for myself was being an artist. I try very hard to tap into ideas that are below the surface and emotions and so on, rather than just going for the first thing that occurs to me. All three of these, I'm working in a different direction right now, but all three of these began without an idea, just some stuff, color splashed on the page, or in the case of From the Center, abstract visions of the space, and then reacting to those, because my idea about that is that it reaches to deeper emotional responses and deeper, more buried memories and ideas than if I just say, well, I'm going to draw a puppy and start out to draw. Puppies are fun to draw, but and then Flights of Fancy is sort of one of those things where every now and then it has to be just for fun. Sometimes you have to just say, I'm doing this because it makes me happy to do this. And that's where that one came from. You have to be familiar with a whole bunch of different kinds of materials. And as I mentioned, I've taught at every level from kindergarten through graduate school. So you have to be very open to the ways that things are working. Otherwise, you produce a bunch of students who paint just like you do, and I would consider that a colossal failure as a teacher if I produced a lot of students who painted the way I do and drew the kinds of images I draw. So,
I am currently residing in Gillette, Wyoming. I am 28 years old, and I graduated from the Black Hills State University in Spearfish, South Dakota, with a studio and a studio art degree. My emphasis during my practice and during my undergrad was ceramics, and that has been my emphasis for some time now, coming up on about 10 years now of creating ceramic work. I'm currently continuing to push my boundaries as a ceramic artist and as an individual. And again, I'm just really excited to be a part of this Zoom meeting and a part of the show.
I really got into art in high school. I moved here to Gillette, Wyoming from Utah, and I took a class from Chris Amon. He really taught me how to look at an image and translate it onto paper. And that was the first time I ever felt like I made art that was somewhat realistic and something that I was proud of. From there, I went on to college, to CSU in Fort Collins, Colorado State University. And my first year was art. And I was in the studio all the time. I loved it. It was wonderful until I took the sculpture class my second semester, and my teacher, it was her mission to, I think, weed us out. She just told us how hard an artist's life was, and how so few artists make it. And it really put these little morsels of doubt in my mind, and I kind of lost that passion. And I decided to change my major. I went to dental hygiene school, and I felt like it was a stable career. As soon as it came back into my life, I felt like a piece of me that had been missing for so long was finally back. And it was just a way for me to express myself like nothing else. And so anyway, I did some pastels, and then I moved to acrylic painting, and I mostly do wildlife. When I view wildlife, they're so primitive and just so slow, like their life is just survival, and just every day is a new day, and I really marvel at that. And wildlife is so beautiful. Every single animal and creature is just so unique, and there's so much to explore there. So that's my biggest inspiration. And I have the two pieces. Sunset Grace is a cow that I saw here in Wyoming a couple years ago, and she just had the most beautiful eyes and just really stood out to me. And so I took some photos of her and painted her. And then Morning Pause is a pronghorn, and we pass, when we do our morning errands, we always pass by this herd of pronghorn in the morning near our house. And my son saw this one male in the field, and he's like, "Oh, Mom, you gotta take a picture of that one and paint it," because I've been talking about painting one for so long. And so I took all these photos of it, and that's Morning Pause. So those are the two pieces I have in the show.
I grew up in Pennsylvania for the first 40 years of my life. I was the youngest of 5 kids who were all creative in one way or another, either in music or in art. I think I tried my first hand at painting when I was about 12 years old. And then I took art classes in high school. And after high school, I went on to a 2-year college for interior design. And then I worked in the trade show industry, designing exhibits and computer graphics for many years before moving to Wyoming in 2008. And that's where I took up painting full time. And I think that was when I realized my potential, and I really started to get serious, going so far as to remodel the spare bed and bath into a studio. I am mostly self-taught, but I did have the opportunity to take several painting courses under the instruction of Jenny Worker from Buffalo, who was an awesome artist and a fabulous teacher. Other than that, I spend a great deal of time reading books, watching videos, studying other artists online, and practicing a whole lot of trial and error. The painting that was accepted into the exhibit is actually the beginning of a series that I've been working on called Wabi Sabi. And that is the art of impermanence and the passage of time. And it's about finding the beauty in the aging process. So I look for things that are rusted and worn or decayed, and I look for textures and subtleties of color that make it unique. And the painting Forsaken is of the 5 silos that stand along Route 16 in Osage, which are obviously not being used anymore. But what drew me to those and utilizing the wax within that painting was the layers. In cold wax painting, I rarely use a brush. I use a knife, I use squeegees, I use brayers, and I build up layers, kind of like what Irene was saying with the colored pencil. There are layers and layers and layers in there. Neat thing about wax, though, is that I refer to it as sculpting more than I do painting, because I can put a layer upon layer upon layer, and some of them are opaque, depending on the wax, the amount of wax that you use. You can go opaque or you can go transparent, and then you can go back in and start scraping away to reveal layers underneath or adding to them. So you get all of these textures and different colors coming through and receding. And with the wax in those silos, it was fascinating in that I would just go on with a palette knife and just spread and allow the color and the wax to do the work. And then it just started to reveal the colors underneath. It was just, it's fun. It's a great time. And I also don't get caught up in the details. The reason I started working with wax was because I wanted to let go of my inhibitions. I wanted to stop being so minute, because that's where I would get lost and I'd get frustrated. I wanted to concentrate more on value and color and texture as opposed to lines. And so the wax allowed me to do that. Plein air painting is to me more about the experience as opposed to the painting. I don't have a whole lot of plein air paintings that I've sold. Some, but for the most part, it's just about being out there. And I've brought some sketches home that I've transformed into bigger paintings. But for the most part, when you're out plein air painting, you're feeling your composition as opposed to just putting it on canvas. Don't let rejection discourage you, because you're gonna get it. I've been submitting to juried exhibitions in different galleries and societies for probably 4 years now. This is my very first acceptance into a juried exhibition. And it's a celebration for me. I about fell on the floor when I got the letter.
So I'm Brittany Denham-Wisnott. I'm currently in Sheridan, Wyoming, and I'm an assistant professor of art here. I teach printmaking, photography, kind of like art business courses, like capstone courses, and then sometimes art history if it's needed. So my background is I received my MFA from The Ohio State. I lived there for about 4 years, going to school, and then staying on for a little while to teach, and then made my way out west. My career, or like how I started in the arts, I actually went to school in Gillette, Wyoming, and the art community there, or the art classes or the high school classes, were so amazing, and I had some really fantastic teachers there that at the last minute were like, hey kid, you could kind of maybe do this, like you should go to art school, and thankfully they did that and had a voice, and so I went to art school. The pieces that you're seeing behind you are House Home 5 and House Home 6. They are indigo, 4 and 5. I've been making a lot of blue houses, if you can tell behind me. So what those are is they are indigo and cyanotype hand quilted pieces. I recently, or I guess it's not recent anymore, but I became a mother about 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago, to a little boy named Hayes. And at the time, I think as art makers, or a lot of times women, I can't speak for everyone, but for myself, I was really terrified that my art practice would somehow go away or disappear in some way, because I was so used to working in a print shop or a studio where they had like really intense processes like darkroom or lithography or something else. I was really scared. And the kiddo I had, I always had this dream that I would just like strap him on my body and like throw him in a little caboose and start like going into the print shop and doing lithos again. And he wasn't that kid. He was very vocal, very awake, very rambunctious. And so my practice had to change in a really beautiful, amazing way. And that was to start quilting, which is, I guess, not that far off since I love processes so much. So I started dyeing my own fabric. So all the indigo that you see was made from my backyard with my kiddo running around. So I dye all of it at home. And yeah, same with cyanotypes. So sometimes you'll see like weird little things in the work, like little toy planes or weird shapes. And a lot of times it's just done in my backyard with my kiddo. So we'll either lay there or cut paper out, or sometimes I'll use some of his toys and I use that and then just kind of cut it all out and make decisions as far as like how painters or 2D artists or anybody would make in the arts, and sew them up and do hand quilting. I do hand quilting mostly instead of using a machine, because I like that idea of things not being perfect or things having the hand in it, because that's a lot of parenting or mothering. Like you have this idea of how something's going to be or the perfection of it, and it's just not achievable. Like you'll never be the perfect parent, or all you can do is like love that thing or love that object or the process of making or the process of parenting. And that's how I see quilting, or how I see the hand quilting. So yeah, the houses come from the idea of me being a house, like having a child inside my body and being a home, and then afterwards becoming a parent and like what that means to like try to create a home for a child. And then the cyanotype, or the addition of the cyanotype, comes from the idea of the history of the making of a cyanotype, which was to archive flora, fauna. The first female photographer was Anna Adkins, and she was using the cyanotype as the ability to keep a copy or a reference of her scientific experiments, which is a lot of, again, being a parent and a first-time parent. And then also it was used as like a blueprint material. So when you hear the word blueprint in architecture, that was from cyanotypes. And so I'm also like building a structure, building a blueprint. My child is like a print of myself, because it's like a secondary being that came from me. And so it's all those ideas kind of compounding together. And what you guys see in the show is like a little snippet, the little small studies that kind of begin these giant mamas that happen afterwards. So what's in the show are just kind of like smaller studies that become big pieces.